Hello everyone. In today's lecture, we will be talking on validation controls in ASP.NET. Validation is an important concept to get a correct output as the user gives the input to web forms. Let's have a look at validation controls in ASP.NET. Why we use validation controls? Validation is an important part of any web application. User's input must always be validated before sending across different layers of the application. So, validation controls are used to implement presentation logic and it is used to validate user input. Then, data format, data type and data range is used for validation. Mainly, validation controls are used to validate the data. Why we have to use validation controls? To maintain data integrity. How we can use this validation control? By checking the input on the client side or server side. For example, is the name text box empty? Does the email text box contain a structural valid email address? So, these things should be validated before submitting the form. There are 6 different validation controls available in ASP.NET. The first one is required field validator. The second one is compare validator. The third one is range validator. Fourth one is regular expression validator. Fifth one is custom validator. And the sixth one is validation summary. Let's see one after the other. Before going into the controls, we should know the properties of the validation controls. The first property is control to validate. Which control is to be validated should be specified here. The second one is error message. The value in this attribute is displayed either when validation summary control is used or when text property is missing. Text. It holds the message to be displayed in the event of the validation failure. So when the validation fails, this text message will be displayed. CSS class. Style appearance of the messages. So we can give different styles to different text. The first one, required field validator. The required field validator control ensures that the required field is not empty. It is generally tied to a text box to force input into the text box. So the text box should not be empty. For that we should give required field validator. The required field validator syntax should contain 3 important parameters. One is ID, second one is error message and the third one is control to validate. ID means it is given by the user. For example, required field validator 1 or 1 or FV1 like that. Then error message. Error message. User defined error message can be given in this particular field. Control to validate. Which text box we are going to validate, whether it's text box 1, 2, etc. So this is the Visual Studio screen. In this particular screen, when you click that particular required field validator, you will see the properties in the right hand side. Here you have to give the error messages, name is required and control to validate is text box 1. The second one is compare validator. From the name itself we can say that we are going to compare 2 values. So the compare validator control compares a value in one control with a fixed value or a value in another control. So this compare validator have the following properties. First one is type. It specifies the data type. The second one is control to compare and the third one is value to compare. That is the first value and the second value. In this compare validator, we should give 4 mandatory parameters. First one is ID, second one is control to compare, third one is control to validate, and the fourth one is error message, that is user defined messages. So when the first text box value and the second text box value is not related, it will pop up some error message. So in this Visual Studio control panel, in the right side corner, you have to give the control to compare, control to validate, and error messages. The third one is range validator. The range validator control verifies that the input value falls within a predetermined range. It has three specific properties. One is type, that is data type. The second one is minimum value, and the third one is maximum value. If it is an integer, we have to give minimum value as well as maximum value. In this range validator syntax, we have to give ID name, control to validate, error message, then maximum value as well as minimum value. Here in this example, I have given the minimum value as 1 and the maximum value as 80. So when you enter 90 in the particular text box, it will pop up some error message. This error message should be given in this particular syntax. Then only it will be displayed near the text box. So in the Visual Studio screen, you have to give the control to validate as well as the maximum and the minimum value. The next control is regular expression validator. This regular expression validator allows validating the input text by matching against a pattern. That is, the expression is an email ID or some internet URL or some phone number. This regular expression validator has the following descriptions. This table summarizes the commonly used syntax for regular expression. For example, if you give /w, it matches any alphanumeric character and underscore. Likewise, if you give /W, it matches any non-word character. So, in this regular expression validator, you have to mention the ID, control to validate, error message, as well as validation expression. This validation expression can be taken from the property menu. When you click the validation expression in the Visual Studio, you will find all the standard expression there. You can choose it from the particular standard expression, or you can give your own expression in the particular box. The next one is custom validator. The custom validator control allows writing application specific custom validation routine for both the client side as well as server side validation. Custom validator is used when the validation is performed to match the user's defined standard. For example, we can create a function and we can use it for this custom validator. In this custom validator, we have to give ID, then the function name, control to validate, as well as error message. These parameters are must. In the Visual Studio panel, you have to give the function name in the properties client validation function. So when you write a function for checking even number or odd number, you can include that particular function here and you can use it for custom validation also. The last one is validation summary. The validation summary control does not perform any validation but shows a summary of all errors in the page. The summary displays the values of the error message property of all validation control that failed validation. In this example, I have given 4 validation controls and the validation summary is displayed like this. So here in syntax, you have to give ID name, display mode, then whether you have to show the summary or not, that is true or false, then header text. You have to specify this validation summary properties here in the right side, like header text, foreground color, enable client script, enabled, like that. To summarize the ASP.NET validation controls, we have required field validator, compare validator, range validator, regular expression validator, custom validator, and validation summary. Hope you all enjoyed the session. Have a good day.